Close your eyes and picture a map of the world. Now, watch as the borders shift and change, empires rise and fall, and one civilization endures through it all. This is the story of China, a land that has seen more change and continuity than perhaps any other on Earth. In this video, we're going to bring that map to life. We'll trace the expansion and contraction of Chinese territory, the spread of its culture, and the evolution of its society over 5,000 years. Our journey through the vast tapestry of Chinese history begins in the misty depths of prehistory, along the fertile banks of the Yellow and Yangtze rivers. Here, over 5,000 years ago, the first seeds of Chinese civilization took root. These mighty waterways, winding through the heart of what would become China, provided the perfect conditions for early human settlements to flourish. As we step back in time, we encounter the Peking man, a species of Homo erectus that lived in the region around 750,000 years ago. These ancient ancestors left behind stone tools and evidence of fire use, hinting at the first glimmers of human ingenuity in the land that would become China. But it was the Neolithic period, beginning around 10,000 BCE, that truly set the stage for the rise of Chinese civilization. The Yangshao culture, emerging around 5000 BCE, marked a significant leap forward. These early farmers cultivated millet along the Yellow River, creating stable food sources that allowed their populations to grow. They crafted exquisite painted pottery, adorned with swimming geometric patterns and stylized animals, showcasing an artistic sensibility that would influence Chinese aesthetics for millennia to come. The Yangshao people lived in small villages, their homes dug partially into the ground for insulation, laying the groundwork for settled agricultural life. As time marched on, the Longshan culture arose around 3000 BCE, building upon the foundations laid by their Yangshao predecessors. The Longshan people introduced new technologies and social structures that would prove crucial to the development of Chinese civilization. They created fine black pottery, so thin and delicate it's often called eggshell pottery, demonstrating advanced craftsmanship. More importantly, they began to build walled settlements, a sign of growing social complexity and the need for defense. These early societies weren't just advancing technologically, they were also developing the spiritual and philosophical underpinnings that would shape Chinese culture for thousands of years. Ancestor worship, a practice that would remain central to Chinese spiritual life well into the modern era, likely began during this period. The people of ancient China saw their ancestors as powerful spirits who could influence the world of the living, a belief that would later evolve into complex systems of ritual and remembrance. As we move closer to the dawn of recorded history, we encounter the semi-legendary figures who occupy the misty borderlands between myth and fact. Fuxi, the legendary first emperor, is said to have taught his people how to fish with nets, hunt with weapons, and domesticate animals. Shennong, the divine farmer, supposedly introduced agriculture and herbal medicine. And then there's the Yellow Emperor, Huangdi, credited with inventing everything from writing to pottery to the principles of governance. While we can't be certain these figures ever existed as individuals, they represented the collective memory of a time when Chinese society was becoming increasingly sophisticated. The stories told about them reflect real advancements, the development of agriculture, the emergence of writing systems, and the creation of social hierarchies that would eventually lead to dynastic rule. Around 2000 BCE, as we stand on the cusp of China's Bronze Age, we can see the foundations of a unique civilization taking place. The people of ancient China had mastered silk production, a technology that would later connect them to the wider world through the Silk Road. They had developed sophisticated jade carving techniques, creating objects of both practical use and ritual significance. And they had begun to create the complex social and political structures that would evolve into China's famous bureaucratic system. As we stand at the threshold of China's Bronze Age around 2000 BCE, a new chapter in the nation's history unfolds, one shrouded in mystery and legend. Enter the Xia dynasty, traditionally considered China's first dynasty, though its historical existence remains the subject of debate among scholars. The story of the Xia is a fascinating blend of myth and emerging archaeological evidence, offering a tantalizing glimpse into the translation from prehistoric societies to the dawn of Chinese civilization as we know it. According to ancient texts like the Records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian, the Xia dynasty was founded by the legendary figure Yu the Great. Yu's claim to fame? His heroic efforts in controlling catastrophic floods that threatened the early agricultural communities along the Yellow River. This tale of Yu's flood control is more than just a story. It symbolizes the early Chinese belief in the ruler's duty to maintain harmony between humanity and nature, a concept that would shape Chinese philosophy for millennia to come. Yu's greatest legacy, however, may have been the establishment of hereditary rule. This marked a crucial shift from tribal leadership to a centralized monarchical system, laying the groundwork for the dynastic cycle that would define Chinese history for the next 4,000 years. The Xia, if it existed as described in later texts, represented the first step towards the complex political structures that would eventually evolve into China's famous bureaucratic system. But here's where things get interesting. While historical records of the Xia are sparse, archaeologists have made discoveries that tantalizingly hint at its possible existence. The Erlitou site in Henan province has revealed evidence of an advanced Bronze Age culture, including palatial structures, sophisticated bronze tools, and exquisite jade artifacts. Some scholars associate these findings with the legendary Xia dynasty, though the debate remains far from settled. What's particularly intriguing about the Erlitou culture is the sudden appearance of highly sophisticated bronze artifacts around 1700 BCE. This marks a significant technological leap from the Neolithic period we explored earlier. How did ancient Chinese artisans master the complex process of bronze casting so quickly? The answer may lie in a hidden connection between metallurgy and agricultural practices that could rewrite our understanding of early Chinese technology. Recent research suggests that early farming communities played a crucial role in the development of metalworking techniques. The same organizational skills and resource management required for successful agriculture may have been applied to the complex process of mining, smelting, and casting metal. This theory challenges our traditional view of technological advancement as a linear progression, and instead points to a more interconnected development of various skills and technologies. The society of the purported Xia dynasty, as gleaned from both legend and archaeological evidence, appears to have been hierarchical. We see the emergence of a class of nobles, skilled artisans, and warriors, indicating early forms of social stratification. This complexity is reflected in the artifacts found at sites like Erlitou, bronze vessels and weapons that would have been symbols of power and prestige. While the historical reality of the Xia dynasty remains uncertain, its legendary status serves a crucial purpose in Chinese cultural memory. It acts as a bridge between the mythical age of culture heroes like Fuxi and Shennong and the more firmly historical Shang dynasty that would follow. The stories of the Xia, whether based on a real dynasty or a compilation of various early Bronze Age cultures, influenced how later dynasties justified their rule through concepts like the Mandate of Heaven. As the myths of legends surrounding the Xia dynasty begin to clear, we find ourselves on firmer historical ground with the emergence of the Shang dynasty around 1600 BCE. This marks a pivotal moment in Chinese history, the transition from the shadowy realms of myth to the bright light of recorded history. The Shang dynasty stands as the earliest Chinese kingdom for which we have indisputable archaeological evidence, thanks in large part to the discovery of oracle bones. These oracle bones, primarily composed of ox scapulae and turtle plastrons, serve as both a window into Shang society and the birthplace of Chinese writing. Inscribed with questions to the gods and ancestral spirits, these artifacts reveal a society deeply rooted in divination and ancestor worship. The Shang kings, serving as intermediaries between the earthly and spiritual realms, would heat these bones until they cracked, interpreting the patterns to divine the future. This practice not only sheds light on Shang religious beliefs, but also provides us with the earliest examples of Chinese characters, a writing system that would evolve over millennia into the complex logographic script used today. The Shang established their capital at Yin, near modern-day Anyang in Henan Province. Excavations at this site have revealed a sophisticated urban center with impressive palatial complexes, workshops, and ritual sites. The layout of the city reflects a society with clear social stratification, with the royal palace and temples occupying the highest ground, surrounded by the residences of nobles and artisans, and finally, the dwellings of commoners on the outskirts. One of the most striking aspects of Shang civilization was their mastery of bronze metallurgy. The bronze artifacts unearthed from Shang sites showcase a level of technological sophistication that was unparalleled in the ancient world. Ritual vessels, often adorned with intricate designs of mythical creatures and geometric patterns, served both religious and social functions. These bronzes were not merely functional objects, but symbols of power and prestige, their possession tightly controlled by the Shang elite. The production of these bronze artifacts required a complex system of resource management and skilled labor. Copper, tin, and lead had to be mined, transported, and smelted, a process that demanded significant organization and technological know-how. This level of metallurgical expertise raises intriguing questions about the speed of technological advancement in ancient China. How did the Shang achieve such mastery over bronze working in a relatively short period? The answer might lie in the unexpected connection between agricultural practices and metalworking techniques. Recent research suggests that the organizational skills and resource management required for successful large-scale agriculture may have been crucial in developing and scaling up metal production. The ability to coordinate large groups of people, manage resources efficiently, and innovate in farming techniques could have directly translated to advancements in metallurgy. This theory challenges our traditional view of technological progress as a linear process, instead pointing to a more interconnected development of various skills and technologies in ancient societies. The Shang society was highly hierarchical, with the king at the apex, serving as both political and religious leader. Below him were the nobles, warriors, artisans, and farmers. This social structure was reinforced through elaborate rituals and ceremonies, many of which centered around ancestor worship. The Shang believed that their royal ancestors held sway over the fortunes of the living, necessitating regular sacrifices and divination to maintain their favor. Warfare played a significant role in Shang society, as evidenced by the numerous weapons found in archaeological sites. The Shang armies, equipped with bronze weapons and utilizing chariots, were a formidable force. They engaged in frequent conflicts with surrounding tribes, both to expand their territory and capture prisoners for use in ritual sacrifice. As the Shang dynasty's power began to wane, a new force emerged on the horizon. Around 1046 BCE, the Zhou people, once vassals of the Shang, rose to challenge their overlords. Led by King Wu, the Zhou defeated the last Shang king at the Battle of Muye, ushering in a new era of Chinese history. The Zhou dynasty, which would become the longest-lasting dynasty in Chinese history, had begun. The Zhou introduced a revolutionary concept that would shape Chinese political thought for millennia to come: the Mandate of Heaven. This idea proposed that the right to rule was granted by divine authority, but it wasn't an unconditional gift. If a ruler became corrupt or failed to govern justly, the mandate could be withdrawn and passed to a more worthy leader. This concept provided a philosophical justification for the Zhou's overthrow of the Shang, and would later be used to legitimize dynastic changes throughout Chinese history. Under the Zhou, China operated under a feudal system. The king distributed land to nobles and vassals in exchange for their loyalty and military support. This system led to a decentralized political structure, with power spread across numerous semi-autonomous states. While this arrangement initially provided stability, it would eventually lead to the dynasty's downfall. The early period of Zhou rule, known as the Western Zhou, from 1046 to 771 BCE, was marked by relative peace and prosperity. The Zhou capital was established at Haojing, near modern-day Xi'an. During this time, the Zhou expanded their territory, pushing the boundaries of Chinese civilization further than ever before. They introduced new agricultural techniques, including improved irrigation systems, which led to increased food production and population growth. However, the stability of the Western Zhou began to crumble in the face of external threats. In 771 BCE, nomadic invaders sacked the Zhou capital, forcing the royal court to flee eastward to Luoyang. This event marked the beginning of the Eastern Zhou period from 770 to 256 BCE, and a gradual decline in the central authority of the Zhou kings. The Eastern Zhou era is divided into two distinct periods: the Spring and Autumn period from 770 to 476 BCE, and the Warring States period from 475 to 221 BCE. During these centuries, the power of the Zhou kings waned as regional states grew increasingly powerful and independent. The once unified Zhou realm fragmented into a patchwork of competing kingdoms, each vying for supremacy. Yet, paradoxically, this era of political turmoil gave birth to one of the most intellectually fertile periods in Chinese history. The breakdown of centralized authority and the competition between states created an environment where new ideas could flourish. This was the age of the 100 schools of thought, when influential philosophers like Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Mo Tzu developed their revolutionary ideas. Confucius, in particular, would have a profound and lasting impact on Chinese culture and governance. His emphasis on moral cultivation, proper social relationships, and meritocracy in government would shape Chinese society for thousands of years. Meanwhile, Lao Tzu's Taoist philosophy offered a counterpoint to Confucian thought, emphasizing harmony with nature and the concept of Wu Wei, or non-action. The Eastern Zhou period also saw significant technological advancements. The widespread adoption of iron tools revolutionized agriculture and warfare. Sophisticated irrigation systems expanded arable land, leading to increased food production. In the military sphere, the invention of the crossbow changed the face of battle, while innovations in siege warfare technology allowed for the conquest of heavily fortified cities. As the Warring States period progressed, warfare between the competing states became increasingly intense and sophisticated. Large armies clashed in epic battles, with tens of thousands of soldiers on each side. The period saw the rise of military strategists like Sun Tzu, whose treatise The Art of War remains influential to this day. Despite the gradual erosion of Zhou authority, the dynasty's cultural and political legacy endured. The Zhou period saw the codification of many aspects of Chinese culture that would persist for millennia, including the emphasis on ancestor worship, the use of the mandate of heaven to justify political authority, and the development of a sophisticated bureaucratic system. As the Zhou dynasty's influence waned, China entered a period of intense transformation that would reshape its political landscape forever. The Warring States period, marked by fierce competition and rapid innovation, set the stage for a pivotal moment in Chinese history: the rise of the Qin dynasty and the unification of China under its first emperor. In 221 BCE, Qin Shi Huang, the ambitious ruler of the state of Qin, accomplished what many thought impossible. He defeated the last of his rivals and declared himself the first emperor of a unified China. This moment marked the end of centuries of division and the birth of imperial China as we know it. But how did Qin Shi Huang achieve this monumental feat, and what were the consequences of his rule? The success of the Qin state can be traced back to a series of reforms implemented by Shang, a legalist philosopher who served as chancellor to King Zhang, later Qin Shi Huang. These reforms emphasized strict laws, harsh punishments, and a meritocratic bureaucracy. The state of Qin became a formidable military machine, capable of mobilizing vast armies and resources. This efficiency, combined with strategic alliances and ruthless tactics, allowed Qin to gradually conquer its rivals. Once in power, Qin Shi Huang set about transforming China into a centralized empire. He abolished the feudal system that had characterized the Zhou dynasty, dividing the empire into 36 commanderies governed by appointed officials. This administrative reorganization laid the foundation for China's imperial bureaucracy that would endure for 2 millennia. One of Qin Shi Huang's most lasting legacies was the standardization of various aspects of Chinese society. He unified the diverse writing systems of the conquered states into a single script, which became the basis for modern Chinese characters. Weights, measures, and even the width of cart axles were standardized across the empire, facilitating trade and communication. A new system of coinage was introduced, replacing the various forms of currency that had circulated in different states. Perhaps the most ambitious and iconic project of Qin Shi Huang's reign was the construction of the Great Wall of China. While earlier states had built defensive walls, the first emperor ordered the connection and extension of these existing fortifications into a single, massive structure. This monumental undertaking required the labor of hundreds of thousands of workers and aimed to protect the northern borders of the empire from nomadic invasions. The Qin dynasty's approach to governance was based on legalist principles, which advocated strict laws and harsh punishments to maintain order. This authoritarian system allowed for rapid implementation of policies, but also led to widespread resentment. The famous burning of books and burying of scholars incident, where Qin Shi Huang allegedly ordered the destruction of texts that didn't align with state ideology, exemplifies the regime's attempt to control thought and suppress dissent. Despite its relatively short duration, the Qin dynasty left an indelible mark on Chinese history. The Terracotta Army, discovered in 1974 near the first emperor's tomb, stands as a testament to the grandeur and ambition of Qin Shi Huang. This vast underground complex, filled with thousands of life-size clay soldiers, horses, and chariots, was created to protect the emperor in the afterlife. However, the harsh rule of the Qin dynasty contained the seeds of its own destruction. The massive construction projects and military campaigns imposed severe burdens on the population. When Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE, the empire quickly descended into chaos. Rebellions broke out across the land, and within 4 years, the Qin dynasty collapsed. From the ashes of the Qin dynasty's collapse, a new power emerged that would shape Chinese civilization for centuries to come. The fall of Qin Shi Huang's empire in 206 BCE left a power vacuum, but it also provided valuable lessons for those who would seek to rule China. How could a new dynasty avoid the pitfalls that doomed the Qin? The answer lay in a delicate balance between strength and flexibility, centralization and compromise. Liu Bang, a man of humble origins who rose to become a powerful rebel leader, seized this opportunity. He defeated his rivals and established the Han Dynasty in 202 BCE, ushering in an era that would become known as China's Golden Age. Unlike the harsh legalist policies of the Qin, Liu Bang and his successors recognized the need for a more sustainable approach to governance. The Han Dynasty's success stemmed from its ability to learn from the past while innovating for the future. They retained many of the Qin's effective administrative reforms, such as standardized writing and measurements, but softened the rigid legal system. The Han emperors embraced Confucianism as the state ideology, emphasizing moral education and filial piety. This shift from pure legalism to a blend of Confucian ethics and practical governance proved to be a winning formula. One of the most significant innovations of the Han period was the development of the imperial examination system. This meritocratic approach to bureaucracy allowed talented individuals from all social classes to serve in government positions based on their knowledge and abilities, rather than birth or connections. The examinations, which tested candidates on Confucian classics and other subjects, became a cornerstone of Chinese governance for over 2 millennia. Under the Han, China experienced unprecedented territorial expansion. Emperor Wu of Han, who reigned from 141 to 87 BCE, launched military campaigns that pushed the empire's borders far beyond those of the Qin. These conquests brought new lands, resources, and peoples under Han control, including parts of Korea, Vietnam, and Central Asia. This expansion had far-reaching consequences, not least of which was the establishment of the famous Silk Road trade network. The Silk Road connected China to distant lands, facilitating the exchange of goods, ideas, and technologies. Chinese silk, highly prized in the Roman Empire, traveled westward, while exotic products like grapes and alfalfa made their way to China. But perhaps more importantly, the Silk Road became a conduit for cultural exchange. Buddhism, which would profoundly influence Chinese thought and art, first entered China during this period. The Han Dynasty saw remarkable advancements in science and technology. The invention of paper around 105 CE by Kai Lun revolutionized record-keeping and the spread of knowledge. Improvements in metallurgy led to better tools and weapons. The seismograph, invented by Zhang in 132 CE, demonstrated the sophistication of Han scientific thinking. In medicine, the Inner Canon of the Yellow Emperor, compiled during this era, laid the foundation for traditional Chinese medicine. Despite its many achievements, the Han Dynasty faced significant challenges. Court intrigues, power struggles between empresses and officials, and the growing influence of eunuchs in the imperial court all contributed to periods of instability. The empire also grappled with external threats, particularly from the nomadic Zhongnu Confederation to the north. The strains on the Han system became increasingly apparent in its later years. Heavy taxation to support military campaigns and lavish court expenditures led to peasant unrest. The Yellow Turban Rebellion of 184 CE, though ultimately suppressed, revealed deep-seated social and economic problems. The central government's authority gradually weakened, and powerful regional warlords emerged. As the Han Dynasty's grip on power weakened, China stood on the precipice of a new era, one that would reshape its political landscape and capture the imagination of generations to come. The fall of the Han in 220 CE didn't just mark the end of an empire, it ignited a period of intense rivalry and legendary heroism known as the Three Kingdoms period. But the seeds of this tumultuous time were sown long before the last Han emperor abdicated his throne. Environmental factors, often overlooked by historians, played a crucial role in the empire's decline. Prolonged droughts and floods disrupted agriculture, leading to food shortages and social unrest. These natural disasters, combined with the heavy taxation and corruption that plagued the late Han, created a perfect storm that would ultimately tear the empire apart. The Three Kingdoms period, spanning from 220 to 280 CE, saw China fractured into three competing states: Wei in the north, Shu in the south, and Wu in the southeast. Each of these kingdoms was led by ambitious warlords who claimed the right to rule all of China. Wei, established by the cunning strategist Cao, controlled the fertile North China plain and the old Han capital of Luoyang. Shu, founded by the virtuous Liu Bei, held sway over the mountainous Sichuan Basin. Wu, under the leadership of Sun Quan, dominated the Yangtze River Delta and the southern coastal regions. This era of division gave rise to some of the most iconic figures in Chinese history. Cao, known for his military genius and political acumen, laid the foundation for Wei's dominance. Liu Bei, claiming descent from the Han imperial line, embodied the Confucian ideals of loyalty and righteousness. His sworn brothers, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, became symbols of unwavering loyalty, later deified in Chinese folk religion. Sun Quan, the youngest of the three main contenders, proved to be a capable ruler who successfully defended Wu against its more powerful neighbors for decades. The Three Kingdoms period was characterized by near constant warfare, as each state sought to reunify China under its banner. This continuous conflict led to significant advancements in military technology and strategy. The famous Battle of Red Cliffs in 208 CE, where the combined forces of Sun Quan and Liu Bei defeated Cao Cao's massive navy, showcased the importance of naval warfare and clever tactics. The battle also highlighted the role of brilliant strategists like Zhuge Liang, whose ingenious plans and inventions became the stuff of legend. Despite the chaos of war, this period saw remarkable cultural and technological developments. The need for efficient communication in times of conflict spurred improvements in paper-making techniques, building upon the invention of paper during the Han Dynasty. The constant demand for weapons and armor led to advancements in metallurgy, while the construction of fortifications prompted innovations in architecture and engineering. The Three Kingdoms era also had a profound impact on Chinese literature and popular culture. The epic novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms, written over 1,000 years later during the Ming Dynasty, romanticized this period and its key figures. This literary masterpiece blended historical facts with folklore and fictional embellishments, creating a narrative that has shaped Chinese cultural identity for centuries. The stories of loyalty, betrayal, and strategic genius found in the novel continue to inspire everything from operas and films to video games in modern times. However, the human cost of this period was immense. The constant warfare led to widespread famine, disease, and population decline. Many areas saw their populations reduced by half or more, with the devastation particularly severe in the Central Plains. The weakening of central authority also allowed for increased autonomy in frontier regions, setting the stage for future conflicts between China and its neighbors. The Three Kingdoms period came to an end in 280 CE, when the state of Wei, which had been usurped by the Sima family to form the Jin dynasty in 265 CE, conquered its rivals. The Jin briefly unified China, but this unity would prove short-lived. The lessons and legends of the Three Kingdoms would echo through Chinese history, influencing political thought, military strategy, and cultural expression for millennia to come. The unification of China under the Jin dynasty in 280 CE seemed to herald a new era of stability after the tumultuous Three Kingdoms period. However, this unity would prove to be as fragile as it was brief. The Jin dynasty, led by the Sima clan who had usurped power from the state of Wei, soon found itself grappling with internal strife and external threats that would plunge China into another prolonged period of division and chaos. The Jin dynasty's troubles began almost immediately after its founding. In 291 CE, a series of conflicts known as the War of the Eight Princes erupted among members of the imperial family. This brutal civil war lasted for 15 years, pitting cousin against cousin in a ruthless struggle for power. The conflict severely weakened the dynasty's authority and left it vulnerable to outside invasions. Taking advantage of the Jin's internal turmoil, nomadic tribes from the north began to push into Chinese territory. These non-Han ethnic groups, including the Xiongnu, Jie, Jiang, and Di, established their own states in northern China, leading to a period known as the 16 Kingdoms. This era, lasting from 304 to 439 CE, saw a rapid succession of short-lived dynasties and constant warfare between competing states. The Jin dynasty, unable to maintain control over the north, retreated southward. In 316 CE, the western Jin capital of Luoyang fell to invading forces, and Emperor Huai was captured. This catastrophic event marked the collapse of the Western Jin and the beginning of the Eastern Jin dynasty, which ruled from Jiangkang, modern-day Nanjing, in the south. Despite controlling the economically prosperous Yangtze River region, the Eastern Jin struggled to reclaim its lost northern territories. While political fragmentation and warfare characterized this period, it also witnessed significant cultural and technological developments. The interaction between Han Chinese and nomadic groups led to a rich exchange of ideas and practices. Military tactics evolved as the settled agricultural society of China adapted to face the mounted warriors of the steppes. Art and architecture saw new influences, blending traditional Chinese styles with motifs and techniques from Central Asia. Buddhism, which had begun to spread during the later Han Dynasty, flourished in this era of political uncertainty. Many rulers of the various kingdoms patronized Buddhist temples and monasteries, seeing the religion as a means to legitimize their rule and unify their diverse populations. The construction of the Yungang grottos near Datong, begun by the Northern Wei dynasty in 460 CE, stands as a testament to the growing influence of Buddhism in Chinese culture. Despite the political chaos, this period saw advancements in technology and science. The constant demand for weapons and fortifications spurred innovations in metallurgy and engineering. The need for efficient communication in times of war led to improvements in papermaking techniques and the development of new writing styles. The fragmentation of China during this period had profound long-term effects on Chinese society and culture. The migration of Han Chinese to the south led to the rapid development and Sinicization of the Yangtze River region, which would become increasingly important in later dynasties. The interaction with non-Han peoples in the north introduced new customs, foods, and styles of dress that would be integrated into Chinese culture. As the 5th century progressed, the political landscape began to stabilize. In the north, the Tuoba clan and the Xianbei people established the Northern Wei dynasty in 386 CE. Through a combination of military conquest and diplomatic marriages, the Northern Wei gradually consolidated power, conquering or absorbing many of the other northern states. This set the stage for the next major period in Chinese history, the Northern and Southern Dynasties. As the Northern Wei dynasty consolidated power in the north, a complex tapestry of competing states emerged in the south, setting the stage for a period known as the Northern and Southern Dynasties. This era, spanning from 420 to 589 CE, would see China divided between non-Han rulers in the north and a succession of Han Chinese dynasties in the south. While many historians focus on the military conquests of the Northern Wei as the driving force towards reunification, the truth is far more nuanced. The cultural and technological exchanges between North and South, along with the artistic and literary flourishing in the southern states, played equally crucial roles in laying the groundwork for a stronger, more culturally diverse Chinese empire. The Northern Wei dynasty, established by the Tuoba clan of the Xianbei people, proved to be a formidable force in northern China. Through a combination of military might and diplomatic finesse, they gradually absorbed or conquered many of the other northern states. But their most significant contribution to Chinese history was not their martial prowess, but their policy of Sinicization. The Xianbei rulers, recognizing the advantages of Chinese culture and administrative practices, began adopting Han customs, language, and governance systems. This process of cultural assimilation would have far-reaching consequences, blending nomadic vigor with Chinese sophistication and creating a unique northern culture. Meanwhile, the south saw a rapid succession of dynasties. Liu Song, Southern Qi, Liang, and Chen, all centered around the city of Jiangkang, or modern-day Nanjing. Despite the political instability marked by court intrigue and frequent changes in leadership, the southern regimes experienced a period of relative cultural prosperity. The Yangtze River Delta became a haven for Han Chinese elites fleeing the turmoil in the north, leading to a concentration of intellectual and artistic talent in the southern courts. This period witnessed a golden age for Buddhism in China. The religion, which had been slowly gaining ground since its introduction during the Han Dynasty, now flourished under the patronage of both northern and southern rulers. Monumental cave temples, such as the Yungang and Longmen grottos, were carved into cliff faces, their walls adorned with intricate Buddhist sculptures and paintings. These sites not only served as centers of religious devotion, but also as showcases for the integration of Indian Buddhist iconography with Chinese artistic traditions. The Northern and Southern Dynasties era was also marked by significant advancements in literature, painting, and calligraphy. The Southern courts, in particular, became centers of literary activity. Poets like Dao Yuan Ming and Xie Lingyun pioneered new forms of verse, while the four paragons of calligraphy, Wang Shiji, Wang Xianji, Xie'an, and Xie Xuan, elevated the art of writing to new heights of aesthetic refinement. These cultural achievements would have a lasting impact on Chinese civilization, influencing artistic and literary traditions for centuries to come. Despite the political division, this period saw remarkable technological innovations. Improvements in ironworking techniques led to the development of better tools and weapons. Hydraulic engineering projects, such as the construction of canals and irrigation systems, helped to increase agricultural productivity. In the south, the cultivation of rice was expanded, while in the north, new drought-resistant crops were introduced. These agricultural advancements supported population growth and economic development in both regions. The era of division was not without its challenges. Both North and South were plagued by court intrigue, military coups, and power struggles. The frequent changes in leadership and shifting alliances created an atmosphere of political instability. However, this very instability may have contributed to the cultural and technological dynamism of the period, as rival states competed not only on the battlefield, but also in the realms of culture and innovation. As the 6th century drew to a close, the stage was set for reunification. The rise of the Sui dynasty, led by Emperor Wen, Yangzhan, would bring an end to the period of division in 589 CE. Drawing on the strengths of both North and South, the Sui would lay the groundwork for a new era of centralized imperial rule, paving the way for the cultural and political flowering of the Tang dynasty. As the 6th century drew to a close, China stood on the brink of a monumental transformation. The rise of the Sui dynasty in 581 CE marked not just the end of centuries of division, but the beginning of a new era that would lay the groundwork for China's golden age. While many focus on the Grand Unification, the true catalyst for the Tang dynasty's success remains hidden in the shadows of history. What exactly happened during those brief 37 years of Sui rule that set the stage for such unprecedented cultural and political achievements? The Sui dynasty, founded by Emperor Wen, or Yang, emerged from the turmoil of the northern and southern dynasties period with a clear vision: to restore centralized imperial rule and unite China once again. Drawing on the strengths of both North and South, Emperor Wen implemented sweeping political and administrative reforms that would shape Chinese governance for centuries to come. He standardized laws, re-established the imperial examination system, and strengthened central authority, creating a model of governance that the Tang would later refine and perfect. One of the Sui dynasty's most ambitious and enduring legacies was the construction of the Grand Canal. This vast waterway, stretching over 1,700 kilometers, connected the Yellow River in the north with the Yangtze River in the south. More than just an engineering marvel, the Grand Canal served as a vital artery for trade, military movement, and economic integration between northern and southern China. Its completion facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures, setting the stage for the cosmopolitan nature of the Tang dynasty. The Sui's infrastructure projects extended far beyond the Grand Canal. Emperor Wen and his successor, Emperor Yang, undertook massive construction efforts, building roads, bridges, and fortifications across the empire. These projects not only consolidated Sui power, but also improved communication and trade across vast distances. The improved infrastructure would prove crucial to the Tang dynasty's later expansion and cultural flourishing. However, the Sui dynasty's ambitious projects came at a steep cost. Heavy taxation, forced labor, and conscription for grand construction efforts and military campaigns sparked widespread discontent among the populace. Emperor Yang's aggressive military campaigns, particularly against the Goguryeo kingdom in Korea, drained resources and further strained the empire's stability. These factors ultimately led to numerous peasant uprisings and rebellions, setting the stage for the dynasty's collapse in 618 CE. Despite its short reign, the Sui dynasty's impact on Chinese history cannot be overstated. By reunifying China and implementing far-reaching reforms, the Sui created a template for centralized imperial rule that subsequent dynasties would build upon. The Grand Canal, in particular, would remain a critical piece of infrastructure for centuries, facilitating economic growth and cultural exchange. The Sui period also saw significant developments in art, literature, and religion. Buddhism, which had gained popularity during the period of division, received imperial patronage under the Sui. This support for Buddhism, combined with the revival of Confucian values and governance, created a unique cultural landscape that the Tang dynasty would later expand upon. As the Sui dynasty crumbled under the weight of its own ambitions, the stage was set for the rise of the Tang. The Tang would inherit a unified China with improved infrastructure, a centralized bureaucracy, and a rich cultural tapestry blending elements from north and south. But the true genius of the Tang lay in how they built upon these foundations, creating a dynasty that would be remembered as one of China's most glorious. As the dust settled on the Sui dynasty's collapse, a new era dawned in Chinese history, one that would elevate the Middle Kingdom to unprecedented heights of cultural and political influence. The Tang dynasty, founded in 618 CE by Emperor Gaozu, inherited a unified China with improved infrastructure and a centralized bureaucracy. But the true genius of the Tang lay in how they built upon these foundations, creating a dynasty that would be remembered as China's Golden Age. The Tang's rise to power was swift and decisive. Emperor Gaozu, born Li Yuan, had served as a general under the Sui. Recognizing the weaknesses of the crumbling dynasty, he seized the opportunity to establish his own rule. His son, Li Shimin, played a crucial role in consolidating power, eventually succeeding his father as Emperor Taizong in 626 CE. Under Taizong's leadership, the Tang Empire expanded rapidly, pushing its borders from Korea to Central Asia. Emperor Taizong's reign set the tone for much of the Tang dynasty's success. He refined the civil service examination system, promoting a meritocratic bureaucracy based on Confucian principles. This system, which would become a model for later dynasties, allowed talented individuals from diverse backgrounds to serve in government positions. The result was a highly efficient administration that could effectively govern a vast and complex empire. The Tang capital, Chang'an, or modern-day Xi'an, grew into the world's largest and most cosmopolitan city of its time. With a population of over 1 million, it dwarfed contemporary European cities. Chang'an's wide, grid-like streets were lined with markets selling goods from across Asia and beyond. Merchants, scholars, and diplomats from as far as Persia, Arabia, and even the Byzantine Empire walked its avenues, creating a melting pot of cultures and ideas. This cultural exchange was facilitated by the Silk Road, which reached its zenith during the Tang era. The vast network of trade routes not only brought exotic goods to China, but it also fostered the spread of technologies, religions, and artistic styles. Buddhism, which had been slowly gaining ground in China, flourished during this period. The construction of monumental cave temples, such as the Mogao Caves near Dunhuang, showcased the integration of Buddhist iconography with Chinese artistic traditions. The Tang dynasty witnessed an extraordinary flowering of arts and literature. Poetry, in particular, reached new heights of sophistication and expression. Li Bai and Du Fu, two of China's most celebrated poets, lived during this era. Their works, along with those of countless other Tang poets, continued to be studied and admired to this day. The visual arts also thrived, with innovations in painting, sculpture, and ceramics. The famous Tang tricolored glazed pottery, with its vibrant hues and fluid forms, exemplifies the artistic achievements of the period. However, the Tang's golden age was not without its challenges. In 755 CE, the An Lushan Rebellion erupted, plunging the empire into nearly a decade of civil war. General An Lushan, a trusted military commander of mixed Sogdian and Turk ancestry, turned against the Tang court, exposing the vulnerabilities of the empire's vast territorial holdings. Although the rebellion was eventually suppressed, it marked a turning point in Tang history. The central government's authority was weakened, and the empire never fully recovered its former glory. Despite this setback, the Tang dynasty continued for another century and a half, experiencing periods of recovery and renewed cultural vitality. The reign of Emperor Xuanzong, which preceded the An Lushan Rebellion, is particularly remembered as a high point of Tang civilization. Under his rule, the arts flourished, and the imperial court became a center of learning and refinement. The Tang dynasty's influence extended far beyond China's borders. its cultural and political models were adopted by neighboring states, particularly Japan and Korea. The Japanese even sent envoys known as kentoshi to study Tang institutions and culture, leading to significant Chinese influence on Japanese art, literature, and governance. As the Tang dynasty's influence faded, China entered a period of political fragmentation that would test the resilience of its civilization. The 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms era, lasting from 907 to 960 CE, saw the once mighty empire splinter into a patchwork of competing states. In the north, 5 short-lived dynasties rose and fell in rapid succession, each struggling to maintain control over the fractious region. Meanwhile, the south was divided among 10 independent kingdoms, each carving out its own sphere of influence. The northern region, once the heartland of Chinese power, became a battleground for ambitious warlords. The later Liang, later Tang, later Jin, later Han, and later Zhou dynasties all claimed the mandate of heaven, but none could secure lasting legitimacy. Military coups and shifting alliances became the norm, with power often changing hands through violence rather than peaceful succession. This instability was fueled by the growing influence of military governors, or jiedushi, who had gained significant autonomy during the late Tang period. These powerful figures often acted as de facto warlords, controlling vast territories and resources, and making reunification a daunting challenge. In contrast, the southern kingdoms enjoyed relative stability and prosperity. Cities like Yangzhou and Hangzhou flourished as centers of commerce and culture. The Wu, Southern Tang, Min, Chu, and Wu Ye kingdoms, among others, benefited from the region's fertile lands and extensive waterways. Agriculture thrived, and maritime trade expanded, connecting China with Southeast Asia and beyond. This economic vitality allowed the southern states to preserve and build upon the cultural achievements of the Tang era, even as the north was embroiled in conflict. Despite the political chaos, this period witnessed remarkable cultural and technological developments. The fragmentation of power allowed for the flourishing of regional cultures, each with its own artistic and literary traditions. Poets and painters found patronage in the courts of various kingdoms, leading to a diverse and vibrant cultural landscape. The art of ceramics reached new heights, with the production of exquisite porcelain that would later become prized throughout the world. Buddhism continued to exert a powerful influence on Chinese society during this time. Monasteries often served as centers of learning and culture, preserving knowledge through turbulent times. Simultaneously, a new intellectual movement was taking shape. Neo-Confucian thought began to emerge, blending traditional Confucian ethics with elements of Buddhism and Taoism. This philosophical synthesis would have profound implications for Chinese intellectual life in the centuries to come. The period also saw significant technological advancements, particularly in the realms of agriculture and warfare. Improved irrigation techniques and the introduction of new crop varieties helped to increase food production, supporting population growth even in times of political instability. In the military sphere, constant warfare led to innovations in weaponry and tactics. The use of gunpowder, first developed during the Tang dynasty, began to spread, though its full potential as a weapon was not yet realized. As the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period progressed, the dream of reunification never fully faded. In 960 CE, a former military general named Zhao Kuangyin seized power in a coup, declaring himself Emperor Taizu and founding the Song dynasty. Through a combination of military prowess and diplomatic skill, Zhou gradually brought much of China back under centralized rule. The Song Reunification marked the end of this tumultuous era and the beginning of a new chapter in Chinese history. The Song Dynasty, founded in 960 CE, ushered in a period of remarkable transformation that would reshape China's future in ways few could have imagined. While military strength secured the throne for Emperor Taizu, it was a surprising shift in governance that truly set the stage for centuries of innovation and cultural flourishing. The elevation of scholar officials to positions of power marked a turning point in Chinese history, creating a meritocratic system that would have far-reaching consequences. At the heart of this transformation was the civil service examination system, which reached new heights of sophistication during the Song era. These rigorous tests, based on Confucian classics and other scholarly works, allowed talented individuals from all social classes to enter government service. This meritocracy fostered a class of highly educated bureaucrats who brought their knowledge and skills to bear on the complex task of governing a vast empire. The emphasis on education and scholarship permeated society, leading to a surge in literacy rates and the widespread dissemination of knowledge. The Song period witnessed an explosion of technological innovation that would reshape not just China, but the entire world. The invention of movable type printing by Shang around 1040 CE revolutionized the spread of information. Books, once laboriously hand-copied and available only to the elite, could now be mass-produced and distributed widely. This democratization of knowledge accelerated the pace of innovation across all fields of study. The economic landscape of China underwent a profound shift during the Song dynasty. The widespread use of paper money, a concept that had existed in rudimentary form earlier, became fully realized. This financial innovation facilitated trade on an unprecedented scale, both within China and across international borders. Urban centers grew rapidly, with the Song capital of Kaifeng becoming one of the largest and most sophisticated cities in the world, boasting a population of over 1 million inhabitants. The maritime Silk Road flourished during this era, connecting China to distant lands through a vast network of sea trade routes. Chinese merchants ventured as far as East Africa, while foreign traders from the Middle East and beyond flocked to Chinese ports. This exchange wasn't limited to goods. Ideas, technologies, and cultural practices flowed along these routes, enriching Chinese society and spreading Chinese innovations far and wide. Despite these advancements, the Song dynasty faced constant threats from powerful nomadic neighbors to the north. The Liao, Jin, and Western Xia dynasties posed significant military challenges, forcing the Song to rely heavily on diplomacy and tribute systems to maintain peace. This pressure, however, had an unexpected benefit. The need for enhanced defenses spurred further technological innovations and forced the Song government to develop sophisticated diplomatic and economic strategies to maintain these relationships. In the sciences, figures like Shen Kuo made groundbreaking observations in fields ranging from astronomy to geology. The Song period saw advancements in mathematics, including the development of a form of algebra, and significant progress in understanding the human body through traditional Chinese medicine. As the Song dynasty's innovations reshaped Chinese society, a new force was gathering strength on the northern steppes. The Mongols, a confederation of nomadic tribes led by the charismatic Genghis Khan, would soon unleash a wave of conquests that would reshape not just China, but much of the known world. In 1271 CE, Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, established the Yuan dynasty, marking the first time all of China fell under foreign rule. The Yuan dynasty represented a seismic shift in Chinese history. Kublai Khan, recognizing the need to adapt to the vastness and complexity of China, moved his capital to Dadu, modern-day Beijing, and set about creating a unique system of governance that blended Mongol and Chinese traditions. This fusion of cultures would have far-reaching consequences, reshaping everything from administration to art and cuisine. Under Mongol rule, China became part of the largest contiguous land empire in history. The Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, created unprecedented opportunities for trade and cultural exchange across Eurasia. The Silk Road, long a conduit for goods and ideas, now flourished as never before. Merchants, diplomats, and travelers from as far away as Europe made their way to China, bringing with them new technologies, religions, and philosophies. It was during this era that Marco Polo, the Venetian merchant, embarked on his famous journey to China. His accounts of the wealth, sophistication, and grandeur of Kublai Khan's court captivated European imaginations and sparked a renewed interest in the East. While some historians debate the accuracy of Polo's tales, his writings undoubtedly played a crucial role in shaping Western perceptions of China for centuries to come. The Yuan dynasty saw significant advancements in various fields. Chinese astronomy flourished under Mongol patronage, with observatories built and star charts created with unprecedented accuracy. The production of blue and white porcelain reached new heights of artistry, becoming prized possessions across Asia and eventually in Europe. In the realm of theater, the Zhou form of musical drama emerged, blending elements of Central Asian and Chinese performance traditions. However, the Yuan period was not without its challenges. The Mongols instituted a rigid social hierarchy, with themselves at the top, followed by other Central Asian peoples, then Northern Chinese, and finally Southern Chinese at the bottom. This system, while initially effective in maintaining Mongol control, sowed the seeds of resentment among the Han Chinese majority. The Mongol emphasis on trade and the influx of foreign silver led to significant economic changes. Paper currency became widely used, and the economy became increasingly monetized. While this brought prosperity to some, it also led to inflation and financial instability, particularly in the later years of the dynasty. As the 14th century progressed, the Yuan dynasty faced mounting challenges. Natural disasters, including floods and plagues, struck with alarming frequency. The Yellow River changed course in 1344, causing widespread devastation. These calamities, combined with heavy taxation and resentment towards Mongol rule, fueled widespread discontent. The Red Turban Rebellion, which began in the 1350s, marked the beginning of the end for the Yuan dynasty. Led by Zhou Yuanzhang, a peasant of humble origins who would later become the founder of the Ming dynasty, the rebellion tapped into deep-seated anti-Mongol sentiment. By 1368, the rebels had captured the Yuan capital, and the last Yuan emperor fled north, bringing an end to nearly a century of Mongol rule in China. The fall of the Yuan dynasty marked a pivotal moment in Chinese history, but the true transformation was yet to come. In 1368, Zhou Yuanzhang, a former peasant rebel leader, ascended to the imperial throne as the Hongwu Emperor, founding the Ming Dynasty. This event signaled more than just a change in rulership. It heralded a renaissance of Han Chinese culture and a reassertion of traditional values after nearly a century of Mongol dominance. The Ming Dynasty's early years were characterized by a determined effort to centralize power and restore Chinese institutions. Emperor Hongwu implemented sweeping reforms, abolishing the Mongol-style government and reviving the civil service examination system based on Confucian principles. This move not only strengthened imperial control, but also reaffirmed the importance of classical Chinese learning and meritocracy in governance. Under Ming rule, China experienced a period of economic prosperity and cultural flourishing. The population grew rapidly, agriculture expanded, and trade flourished. Cities like Nanjing and Beijing became centers of commerce and culture, attracting merchants, scholars, and artisans from across the empire. One of the most remarkable aspects of the early Ming Dynasty was its naval expeditions, led by the legendary admiral Zhang He. Between 1405 and 1433, Zhang He commanded 7 massive voyages that reached as far as East Africa. These expeditions, involving fleets of hundreds of ships and tens of thousands of men, demonstrated China's technological prowess and expanded its diplomatic and trade networks across the Indian Ocean. However, the Ming's relationship with the outside world was complex and often contradictory. While the treasure fleets showcased China's power and engaged in trade, the dynasty also implemented policies of isolation and restrictions on foreign commerce. This duality would have lasting implications for China's place in the world and its interactions with other civilizations. The Ming Dynasty is perhaps best known for its grand construction projects. Emperor Yongle, who ruled from 1402 to 1424, moved the capital from Nanjing to Beijing and initiated the construction of the Forbidden City. This vast complex of palaces and ceremonial buildings became the seat of imperial power and a symbol of China's architectural and artistic achievements. The Ming also undertook extensive renovations and expansions of the Great Wall, creating much of the structure we see today. Despite its early successes, the Ming Dynasty faced significant challenges as it progressed. Natural disasters, including droughts and floods, led to crop failures and famine in some regions. The reliance on silver as currency, coupled with a decline in silver imports, caused economic strain. Corruption within the imperial court and bureaucracy grew, weakening the government's effectiveness and eroding public trust. By the 16th century, the Ming faced increasing external threats. Japanese pirates raided coastal areas, while to the north, the Manchu people grew in power and began to challenge Ming authority. The dynasty's military, once formidable, struggled to repel these incursions effectively. Internal rebellions, fueled by economic hardship and dissatisfaction with imperial rule, further destabilized the empire. The final blow came in the early 17th century. A combination of factors, including climate change leading to crop failures, widespread rebellion, and Manchu invasions from the northeast, overwhelmed the Ming government. In 1644, rebel forces captured Beijing, and the last Ming emperor took his own life, bringing an end to the dynasty's 276-year rule. The fall of the Ming Dynasty in 1644 marked a turning point in Chinese history, but the true transformation was just beginning. As Beijing fell to rebel forces and the last Ming emperor took his own life, a new power emerged from the northeast, the Manchus. How did this small group of nomadic warriors manage to conquer and rule China for nearly 3 centuries? The answer lies in a remarkable blend of military prowess, political savvy, and cultural adaptation that would reshape the face of East Asia. The Qing dynasty, established by the Manchu people in 1644, became China's last imperial dynasty. At first, many believed the Manchu conquest would be short-lived, but they soon proved their staying power. The early Qing rulers secured their position through a combination of military strength and strategic alliances. They expanded China's territory to its largest historical borders, incorporating regions like Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia, and Taiwan. This vast multi-ethnic empire would endure for almost 300 years, overseeing periods of great prosperity and cultural flourishing. Early Qing emperors, such as Kangxi from 1661 to 1722 and Qianlong from 1735 to 1796, presided over areas of economic growth, territorial expansion, and cultural integration. They skillfully blended Manchu and Han Chinese traditions, creating a unique hybrid culture that defined their rule. The Qing implemented policies like the Q hairstyle and language requirements to reinforce Manchu dominance, while maintaining many Ming administrative practices to govern effectively. The Qing maintained a strong focus on military modernization, establishing the Green Standard Army and the 8 Banners system. These innovations organized both military and civilian life, helping to secure internal stability and defend against external threats. The empire's vast river systems and the Grand Canal were carefully maintained, supporting domestic trade and food distribution. This infrastructure facilitated economic growth in both urban and rural areas, contributing to the dynasty's longevity. Despite their non-Han origins, the Qing emperors embraced and promoted Chinese culture. The imperial court remained a center of traditional rituals, scholarly pursuits, and Confucian governance. A complex bureaucracy managed one of the world's most populous and diverse empires, balancing the needs of various ethnic groups and regions. However, the Qing era also saw increasing foreign influence and trade, leading to tensions with Western powers. These conflicts culminated in events like the Opium Wars from 1839 to 1842, as well as 1856 to 1860, and the imposition of unequal treaties that eroded Chinese sovereignty. The dynasty's ability to adapt to these new challenges would ultimately determine its fate. As the Qing expanded their territory, they set in motion unforeseen consequences that would contribute to the dynasty's eventual downfall. The vastness of the empire, while a source of pride and resources, also stretched the government's ability to govern effectively. Maintaining control over such diverse populations and far-flung regions became increasingly difficult as the centuries wore on. The cultural synthesis that emerged under Qing rule had profound and lasting effects on Chinese society. Manchu customs and traditions became interwoven with Han Chinese culture, creating a rich tapestry that still influences modern China. This blending of cultures extended to art, literature, and philosophy, producing new forms of expression that reflected the complex identity of the Qing state. By 1683, when the Qing had consolidated their power over China proper, few could have predicted the empire would go on to double in size. The conquests in Central Asia and Tibet expanded China's influence, but also brought new challenges. The Qing now had to defend long, exposed borders against potential invasions and manage relationships with neighboring powers like Russia. The fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912 marked the end of an era that lasted for millennia. For over 2,000 years, emperors had ruled China, each dynasty rising and falling in a cycle that seemed as eternal as the Middle Kingdom itself. But as the 20th century dawned, this ancient system crumbled in the face of internal strife, foreign pressures, and a growing call for modernization and reform. The seeds of revolution had been planted long before, nurtured by decades of humiliation at the hands of foreign powers and the Qing government's inability to effectively modernize. As the new century began, these seeds sprouted into a full-blown revolutionary movement. At the forefront was Sun Yat-sen and his Tongmenghui organization, which advocated for a republican government based on his three principles of the people: nationalism, democracy, and the people's livelihood. The spark that ignited the powder keg came on October 10, 1911, with the Wuchang Uprising. What began as a localized revolt quickly spread like wildfire across China. Province after province declared independence from Qing rule, and the dynasty that had once seemed invincible now teetered on the brink of collapse. The court, desperate to maintain control, turned to an unlikely savior, Yuan Shikai, a powerful military general with a reputation for cunning and ambition. Yuan negotiated with both the revolutionaries and the Qing court, positioning himself as an indispensable man who could prevent all-out civil war. His maneuvering led to a momentous event, the abdication of the last emperor, Puyi, on February 12, 1912. With this act, over 2 millennia of imperial rule came to an end, not with a bang, but with a quiet stroke of a brush on paper. The Republic of China was officially established, with Sun Yat-sen briefly serving as its provisional president. However, the fledgling republic faced immense challenges from its very inception. The vast country, long accustomed to centralized imperial rule, now found itself without a strong unifying force. Regional warlords began to assert their autonomy, and the dream of a unified, democratic China seemed to be slipping away almost as soon as it had been realized. Power soon shifted to Yuan Shikai, who maneuvered his way into the presidency. Yuan's rule marked a period of both promise and peril for the young republic. On one hand, he brought a measure of stability and implemented some modernizing reforms. On the other, his autocratic tendencies and personal ambitions threatened the very republican ideals upon which the new China was supposed to be built. In a move that shocked many, Yuan declared himself emperor in 1915, attempting to turn back the clock and restore monarchical rule. This brazen power grab met with fierce opposition from across the political spectrum. Faced with widespread resistance, Yuan was forced to abandon his imperial ambitions after just 83 days. The failed restoration dealt a severe blow to Yuan's authority, and he died shortly after in 1916, leaving China without a strong central government. The period following Yuan's death saw China descend into an era of warlordism, with various military strongmen carving out their own fiefdoms across the country. The promise of a unified, democratic China seemed further away than ever. Yet, even in this time of fragmentation and conflict, the seeds of future change were being sown. The early republic, despite its shortcomings, had introduced new ideas and aspirations to the Chinese people. Concepts of nationalism, democracy, and modernization had taken root and would continue to shape China's political landscape throughout the 20th century. The revolutionary spirit that had brought down the Qing dynasty would live on, inspiring future movements and leaders in their quest to define China's place in the modern world. The dream of a modern, democratic China seemed within reach after the fall of the Qin dynasty in 1912. But the next chapter in China's story would unfold in ways few could have predicted. As the last emperor abdicated his throne, a power vacuum emerged that would plunge the nation into a period of chaos and fragmentation known as the Warlord era. The death of Yuan Shikai in 1916 marked the true beginning of this tumultuous time. Yuan, a powerful military leader who had briefly declared himself emperor, left behind a fractured political landscape. Without a strong central authority, regional military commanders known as warlords seized control of different parts of the country. These warlords, often former officers of the Qing military, commanded their own armies and ruled their territories like personal fiefdoms. The map of China during this period resembled a constantly shifting patchwork. Major factions like the Anhui, Zhili, and Fenchang cliques vied for dominance, forming alliances one day only to betray each other the next. Cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou became centers of power, changing hands frequently as warlords fought for control. The common people bore the brunt of this instability, suffering under heavy taxation, forced conscription, and the constant threat of violence. Yet amidst the chaos, new ideas were taking root. The May 4th movement of 1919 sparked a surge in Chinese nationalism and a desire for modernization. Intellectuals and students, inspired by Western concepts of democracy and science, began to challenge traditional Confucian values. They called for a new culture that could strengthen China and help it stand up to foreign imperialism. This period saw the birth of modern Chinese literature, with writers experimenting with vernacular language to reach a wider audience. The political landscape was also evolving. Sun Yat-sen's Kuomintang or KMT party sought to reunify the country under a republican government. Meanwhile, a group of young radicals, influenced by the recent Russian Revolution, founded the Chinese Communist Party or CCP in 1921. These two parties, initially allies, would go on to shape China's future in ways that would have been unimaginable just a few years earlier. Economic conditions during the Warlord era varied greatly across regions. Some areas, particularly coastal cities, experienced industrial growth and modernization. Shanghai, for instance, became a thriving metropolis, its bustling port connecting China to the global economy. However, much of the country, especially the rural interior, suffered from poverty, banditry, and exploitation under warlord rule. The lack of a unified national economy hindered overall development and exacerbated existing inequalities. Despite the political fragmentation, this period paradoxically strengthened China's national identity. The shared experience of hardship and the desire for a strong, unified nation brought people together in ways that transcended regional differences. The May 4th movement, in particular, played a crucial role in fostering a sense of Chinese nationalism that would endure long after the warlord era ended. The turning point came with the Northern Expedition of 1926 to 1928. Led by Chiang Kai-shek, the military arm of the Kuomintang set out to defeat the warlords and reunify the country. With support from the Soviet Union and the cooperation of the CCP, Chiang's forces gradually pushed northward, defeating or co-opting various warlord armies along the way. By 1928, the expedition had succeeded in establishing a new national government in Nanjing, marking the official end of the warlord era. In the wake of the Qing dynasty's collapse, China found itself at a crossroads. The revolutionary spirit that had toppled millennia of imperial rule now faced a new challenge: forging a modern nation from the fragments of an ancient empire. But the path forward was far from clear. How could a country steeped in tradition navigate the turbulent waters of the 20th century? The answer lay in the emergence of two powerful forces that would shape China's destiny for decades to come: the Kuomintang, or KMT, and the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP. Born from the chaos of the early republic, these rival movements offered competing visions for China's future, each drawing on a mix of traditional wisdom and radical new ideas. The Kuomintang, or Nationalist Party, was founded by Sun Yat-sen in 1912. Sun, a Western-educated doctor turned revolutionary, envisioned a strong, unified China built on the principles of nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood. His 3 Principles of the People became the ideological foundation of the KMT, blending elements of Chinese philosophy with modern political thought. Meanwhile, a group of intellectuals and workers, inspired by the success of the Russian Revolution, gathered in Shanghai in 1921 to form the Chinese Communist Party. Among them was a young Mao Zedong, whose ideas would later reshape the movement and the nation. The CCP offered a radical alternative to the KMT's vision, promising to overthrow not just foreign imperialism, but also the traditional class structure that had dominated Chinese society for centuries. Initially, these two movements found common ground in their opposition to warlordism and foreign influence. In 1923, with support from the Soviet Union, the KMT and CCP formed an uneasy alliance known as the First Unified Front. This collaboration aimed to unify China and expel the imperialist powers that still held sway over much of the country's economy and territory. The alliance bore fruit in 1926 with the launch of the Northern Expedition, a military campaign led by Chiang Kai-shek, Sun Yat-sen's successor as leader of the KMT. The expedition successfully defeated major warlords and established a nationalist government in Nanjing by 1928. For a brief moment, it seemed that China might finally achieve the unity and stability it had long sought. However, the ideological differences between the KMT and CCP proved too great to overcome. In 1927, Chiang Kai-shek, fearing communist influence within his own ranks, launched a violent purge known as the Shanghai Massacre. Thousands of communists and suspected sympathizers were arrested or killed, marking the beginning of a civil war that would last, with interruptions, for more than 2 decades. Forced underground and driven from the cities, the CCP retreated to rural areas where they began to experiment with new strategies. Under the leadership of Mao Zedong, the party shifted its focus from urban workers to the vast peasant population of China's countryside. in the remote hills of Jiangxi province, they established a Soviet region, a miniature state within a state where they could put their ideas into practice. This period of experimentation would prove crucial for the CCP's future success. They developed new tactics of guerrilla warfare, land reform, and mass mobilization that would serve them well in the coming years. Meanwhile, the KMT-controlled government in Nanjing struggled with corruption, economic instability, and the growing threat of Japanese aggression. As the 1930s progressed, tensions with Japan began to overshadow the conflict between the KMT and CCP. The Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1931 and the escalating incidents that followed fueled a rising tide of nationalism across China. Both the nationalists and communists found themselves caught between their ideological struggle and the pressing need to defend the nation against foreign invasion. The Second Sino-Japanese War erupted in 1937, transforming China's internal struggle into a fight for national survival. The Marco Polo Bridge incident near Beijing sparked a full-scale Japanese invasion, thrusting China into World War II. This external threat forced bitter rivals, the Kuomintang, or KMT, and the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, into an uneasy alliance. The Second United Front emerged, but at what cost to each party's vision for China's future? As Japanese forces advanced, major cities fell like dominoes. Beijing, Shanghai, and Nanjing succumbed to the invaders. The Nanjing Massacre of 1937 and 1938 became one of the war's darkest chapters, with hundreds of thousands of civilians brutally killed. The Chinese government, led by Chiang Kai-shek, retreated to Chongqing in the country's interior. From this new capital, the Nationalists coordinated their resistance efforts. Meanwhile, Mao Zedong's communist forces adopted guerrilla tactics, gradually expanding their influence in Japanese-occupied territories. This strategy allowed the CCP to build popular support among rural populations, laying the groundwork for their eventual rise to power. The war's impact on China was devastating. An estimated 20 million Chinese lost their lives, while millions more faced displacement, famine, and unimaginable suffering. China's struggle against Japan didn't go unnoticed by the international community. The United States, in particular, provided crucial support through the Lend-Lease program. This aid included military equipment, supplies, and advisors. The Burma Road, a vital supply route, became a lifeline for Chinese resistance. These international connections would have far-reaching consequences for China's post-war geopolitical alignment. Despite the overwhelming odds, Chinese forces managed to achieve some notable victories. The Battle of Wuhan in 1938 and the multiple battles of Changsha between 1939 and 1942 demonstrated Chinese resilience and tactical ingenuity. These successes, though unable to turn the tide of the war, prevented Japan from fully consolidating its hold on eastern China. The conflict's brutality and duration reshaped Chinese society. Traditional social structures crumbled under the weight of war, while new forms of nationalism and political consciousness emerged. The shared experience of resistance against a foreign invader created a sense of national unity that transcended previous divisions. However, this unity was fragile, and the underlying tensions between the KMT and CCP continued to simmer beneath the surface. As the war progressed, the balance of power within China shifted subtly but significantly. The communist guerrilla tactics and popular support in rural areas contrasted with the nationalist conventional military approach and urban power base. This diversion in strategy and support would have profound implications in the post-war struggle for control of China. The Second Sino-Japanese War finally ended in 1945, but not through China's efforts alone. Japan's defeat came after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Soviet invasion of Manchuria. As Japanese forces surrendered, China emerged victorious but utterly devastated. The country's infrastructure lay in ruins, its economy shattered, and its population traumatized by years of brutal occupation. In the war's aftermath, China faced the monumental task of rebuilding. However, the fragile alliance between the KMT and CCP quickly unraveled. The ideological differences and power struggles that had been temporarily set aside now resurfaced with renewed intensity. The stage was set for the final act of the Chinese Civil War, a conflict that would determine the future course of the world's most populous nation. As the dust settled on World War II, China found itself at the precipice of another monumental struggle. The fragile alliance between the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and the Kuomintang, KMT, that had held together during the fight against Japanese aggression now crumbled, reigniting the Chinese Civil War. This conflict would ultimately shape the future of the world's most populous nation and set the stage for China's emergence as a global superpower in the decades to come. The CCP, led by the charismatic Mao Zedong, had spent the war years strengthening its position in rural areas. Through land reforms and effective guerrilla tactics, the communists had won the hearts and minds of many peasants, building a formidable base of support. Meanwhile, the KMT under Chiang Kai-shek controlled major cities and had superior numbers and foreign support, particularly from the United States. However, the Nationalists were plagued by corruption, low morale, and poor military strategy. As hostilities resumed in 1946, the KMT initially gained the upper hand, capturing key cities and pushing the communists back. But the tide began to turn in 1947, as the CCP launched a series of effective counteroffensives. The People's Liberation Army, or PLA, the military arm of the CCP, utilized flexible strategies that exploited the KMT's weaknesses. They mobilized peasant support, engaged in guerrilla warfare, and gradually shifted the balance of power in their favor. The turning point came in 1948 with the Laoshen, Huaihai, and Pingjing campaigns. These massive military operations saw the PLA outmaneuver and decisively defeat the nationalist forces. The CCP's promise of land redistribution, social reforms, and anti-corruption measures continued to attract widespread support among China's rural population, further eroding KMT influence. By 1949, the momentum had swung decisively in favor of the communists. City after city fell to the PLA as they swept across the country. The KMT's American-supplied weapons and superior numbers proved no match for the CCP's strategic acumen and popular support. Chiang Kai-shek and his followers found themselves pushed back to the coastal areas, and eventually they were forced to retreat to the island of Taiwan. On October 1, 1949, Mao Zedong stood atop the Gate of Heavenly Peace in Beijing and proclaimed the founding of the People's Republic of China, or PRC. This moment marked not just the end of the Chinese Civil War, but the beginning of a new era in Chinese history. The world's most populous nation was now under communist rule, a development that would have far-reaching consequences for global politics in the decades to come. The victory of the CCP was the result of a complex interplay of factors. The Communists had effectively capitalized on the weaknesses of the KMT, presenting themselves as a force for positive change in a country ravaged by decades of war and corruption. Their promise of land reform resonated deeply with China's vast peasant population, who had long suffered under an inequitable system of land ownership. Moreover, the CCP had learned valuable lessons from their earlier defeats at the hands of the KMT in the 1920s and 1930s. They had developed a disciplined, ideologically committed fighting force in the PLA and had honed their tactics through years of guerrilla warfare against both the Japanese and the Nationalists. In contrast, the KMT, despite its initial advantages, had become increasingly disconnected from the Chinese people, particularly in rural areas. The Civil War's outcome reshaped the geopolitical landscape of East Asia. The retreat of the KMT to Taiwan created a political division that remains unresolved to this day. It also set the stage for decades of tension between the PRC and the United States, which continued to recognize the KMT government in Taiwan as the legitimate rulers of China until the 1970s. In 1949, as the dust settled from decades of conflict, China stood on the brink of a new era. Mao Zedong, the charismatic leader of the Chinese Communist Party, had emerged victorious from the long Civil War. His vision for a socialist China would reshape the nation's trajectory for the next 3 decades, ushering in a period of radical transformation and tumultuous change. Mao's first order of business was to consolidate power and reshape Chinese society. The land reform movement, launched shortly after the establishment of the People's Republic of China, sought to dismantle the traditional rural power structures. Land was seized from wealthy landlords and redistributed to poor peasants, a move that garnered widespread support among the rural population. However, this process was far from peaceful. Violence and executions were common, as old scores were settled and class enemies were purged. By 1958, Mao felt confident enough to launch his most ambitious project yet, the Great Leap Forward. This massive campaign aimed to rapidly transform China from an agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse. Across the country, people were organized into massive communes. In rural areas, farmers were instructed to abandon their traditional practices in favor of experimental techniques that promised miraculous yields. Meanwhile, in cities and villages alike, backyard furnaces sprang up as part of a drive to boost steel production. The results were catastrophic. The experimental farming methods failed spectacularly, leading to widespread crop failures. At the same time, the focus on steel production meant that many farmers neglected their fields. Local officials, fearful of punishment, falsified reports of bumper harvests, while actual food production plummeted. The result was the Great Chinese Famine, a humanitarian disaster of staggering proportions. Between 1959 and 1961, an estimated 30 million people died from starvation and related causes. The failure of the Great Leap Forward temporarily weakened Mao's position within the party. More moderate leaders like Liu Shaoqi and Deng Xiaoping gained influence, implementing policies to stabilize the economy and improve living conditions. However, Mao was not content to fade into the background. In 1966, he launched the Cultural Revolution, a movement that would plunge China into a decade of chaos and violence. The Cultural Revolution began as a campaign to purge the party and society of, quote, capitalist roaders and other perceived enemies of socialism. Mao mobilized millions of young people, known as Red Guards, to carry out his vision. Schools and universities were closed as students took to the streets, denouncing teachers, intellectuals, and even their own parents as counter-revolutionaries. Cultural heritage sites were vandalized or destroyed in the name of breaking with the old ways. As the movement spiraled out of control, it evolved into a complex power struggle. Different factions of Red Guards fought each other, while Mao's rivals within the party were purged. The army was eventually called in to restore order, but not before countless lives had been disrupted or destroyed. The exact death toll of the Cultural Revolution remains unknown, but estimates range from hundreds of thousands to millions. Despite the turmoil at home, Mao's China pursued an assertive foreign policy. The Sino-Soviet split, which began in the late 1950s, deepened during this period. China positioned itself as a rival center of communist ideology, challenging the Soviet Union's leadership of the global socialist movement. This shift in the geopolitical landscape caught the attention of the United States, leading to a thaw in Sino-American relations. In 1972, U.S. President Richard Nixon made his historic visit to China, marking the country's reemergence on the world stage. Mao Zedong's death in 1976 marked the end of an era. His legacy is complex and contradictory. While he is credited with unifying China and establishing a strong centralized state, his rule was also marked by political repression, economic mismanagement, and human suffering on a massive scale. The scars of the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution would take decades to heal. As the dust settled on China's tumultuous mid-20th century, a new era dawned with the rise of Deng Xiaoping. In 1978, just 2 years after Mao Zedong's death, Deng emerged as China's paramount leader, setting the stage for a dramatic transformation that would reshape not only China, but the entire global economy. Deng's vision for China was radically different from his predecessors. Where Mao had emphasized ideological purity and class struggle, Deng took a pragmatic approach, famously declaring, quote, "It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice." This philosophy underpinned Deng's bold policy of reform and opening up, which aimed to modernize China's economy while maintaining the Communist Party's political control. The reforms began in the countryside, where the collective farming system was dismantled in favor of the household responsibility system. This allowed farmers to manage their own plots and sell surplus produce on the open market. The results were dramatic. Agricultural productivity soared, and rural incomes rose significantly, lifting millions out of poverty. But Deng's ambitions extended far beyond agriculture. In 1980, he established Special Economic Zones, or SEZs, in coastal cities like Shenzhen, Zhuhai, and Xiamen. These zones became laboratories for market-oriented policies, attracting foreign investment and fostering private entrepreneurship. The success of the SEZs was nothing short of remarkable. Shenzhen, once a sleepy fishing village, transformed into a bustling metropolis and tech hub in just a few decades. As China's economy diversified and grew, it increasingly integrated with global markets. The country became known as the world's factory, with its manufacturing sector producing everything from textiles to electronics for export worldwide. This export-driven growth strategy, combined with domestic reforms, fueled China's rapid economic ascent. Between 1978 and 1997, China's GDP grew at an average annual rate of 9.6%, a pace of sustained growth unprecedented in human history. However, Deng's vision of reform had its limits. While he encouraged economic liberalization, he maintained strict political control. This tension came to a head in 1989 with the Tiananmen Square protests, where students and workers demanded political reforms to match the economic changes. The government's violent suppression of these protests shocked the world and demonstrated the limits of China's opening up. Despite this setback, Deng pushed forward with his reform agenda. He embarked on a southern tour in 1992, visiting the SEZs and reaffirming China's commitment to market-oriented reforms. This tour reinvigorated the reform process, leading to further liberalization of the economy and an even greater embrace of global trade. Deng's pragmatism extended to foreign policy as well. He normalized relations with the United States and other Western powers, recognizing that China's development depended on positive engagement with the international community. This approach paid dividends as foreign investment poured into China, bringing with it not just capital, but also technology and management expertise. The culmination of Deng's era came in 1997, with the return of Hong Kong to Chinese sovereignty. This event, based on Deng's principle of one country, two systems, marked China's reemergence as a major power on the world stage. It symbolized both the end of the century of humiliation that had begun with the Opium Wars and the beginning of a new chapter in China's history. Deng Xiaoping's reforms fundamentally altered China's trajectory. By embracing market principles while maintaining political control, he created a unique model of development that challenged Western assumptions about the relationship between economic and political liberalization. The success of this model in lifting hundreds of millions out of poverty and transforming China into an economic powerhouse would have profound implications for the global balance of power in the coming decades. As the 20th century drew to a close, China stood on the brink of a new era. The return of Hong Kong and Macau to Chinese sovereignty marked not just the end of European colonial rule in China, but also a symbolic reassertion of China's place on the world stage. These handovers, occurring in 1997 and 1999 respectively, would test China's ability to balance its growing economic power with political control, setting the stage for the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. Hong Kong's story began over 150 years earlier, when it was ceded to Britain after the First Opium War in 1842. Over the decades that followed, this small island territory transformed into a global financial powerhouse, its skyline of gleaming skyscrapers a testament to its economic success. But Hong Kong's days as a British colony were numbered. In 1984, after years of negotiation, The Sino-British Joint Declaration laid out the framework for Hong Kong's return to China under the principle of one country, two systems. This innovative approach promised to preserve Hong Kong's capitalist economy, legal system, and civil liberties for 50 years after the handover, while recognizing Chinese sovereignty. It was an unprecedented experiment in governance, attempting to bridge the gap between two vastly different political and economic systems. The world watched with a mixture of hope and trepidation as July 1, 1997 approached. The handover ceremony itself was a spectacle of historical proportions. As the clock struck midnight, the Union Jack was lowered for the last time, and the red flag of China rose over Hong Kong. Prince Charles and Chinese President Jiang Zemin presided over the ceremony, symbolizing the peaceful transfer of power from one of the world's oldest monarchies to the world's largest communist state. For many Hong Kong residents, the moment was bittersweet, a return to the motherland tinged with uncertainty about the future. 2 years later, on December 20, 1999, a similar scene played out in Macau. This former Portuguese enclave, which had been under European control since the 16th century, also returned to Chinese sovereignty under the one country, two systems model. While Macau's handover garnered less global attention than Hong Kong's, it was no less significant for China's national narrative of reunification and resurgence. In the years following the handovers, both territories experienced economic growth and transformation. Hong Kong continued to thrive as a key financial hub, its stock market becoming increasingly important for Chinese companies seeking international investment. Macau, meanwhile, embraced its new role as the Las Vegas of Asia, its casino industry booming under Chinese rule. The success of these territories seemed to validate the one country, two systems approach, showcasing China's ability to manage diverse economic models within its borders. However, beneath the surface of economic prosperity, political tensions began to simmer, particularly in Hong Kong. The promised 50 years of autonomy became a countdown clock for many Hong Kongers, who grew increasingly concerned about the erosion of civil liberties and democratic governance. Protests and debates over the limits of the one country, two systems model became more frequent, challenging Beijing's vision for the territory's future. The handovers of Hong Kong and Macau represented more than just the return of lost territories. They were a test of China's ability to manage complex political and economic traditions. As China stepped onto the global stage as a rising power, its handling of these former colonies would be closely watched by the international community. The success or failure of the one country, two systems model in Hong Kong and Macau would have implications far beyond their borders, potentially influencing China's approach to other territorial disputes and its broader foreign policy. As the new millennium dawned, China emerged as a global powerhouse, reshaping the world order and challenging long-held assumptions about economic and political development. The country's meteoric rise was driven by a unique blend of state-directed capitalism and authoritarian governance, a model that came to be known as socialism with Chinese characteristics. Under the leadership of Hu Jintao and later Xi Jinping, China pursued ambitious reforms that solidified its position as the world's second-largest economy, with robust growth fueled by manufacturing, exports, and technological innovation. China's integration into the global economy accelerated with its entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001. This watershed moment opened the floodgates for foreign investment and trade, propelling China's economic modernization to unprecedented heights. Cities like Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Beijing transformed into gleaming metropolises, their skylines dotted with futuristic skyscrapers that symbolize China's rapid urbanization and economic prowess. As hundreds of millions of Chinese citizens were lifted out of poverty, the country's middle class swelled, creating a vast consumer market that attracted businesses from around the world. But China's ambitions extended far beyond its borders. In 2013, President Xi Jinping unveiled the Belt and Road Initiative, a massive global infrastructure and investment project aimed at enhancing connectivity across Asia, Africa, and Europe. This modern-day Silk Road sought to cement China's position as a global leader, expanding its economic and political influence through a web of railways, ports, and trade agreements. The initiative, while met with both enthusiasm and skepticism internationally, signaled China's intention to reshape global trade patterns and geopolitical alignments. On the technological front, China made significant strides, positioning itself as a leader in cutting-edge fields. The nation poured resources into artificial intelligence, 5G networks, and renewable energy, seeking to dominate the industries of the future. Chinese companies like Huawei, Alibaba, and Tencent became global tech giants, challenging the dominance of Silicon Valley. In space exploration, China achieved notable successes with its Chang'e lunar missions and the development of its own space station, joining an elite club of spacefaring nations. However, China's rise was not without its challenges and controversies. Politically, the country maintained authoritarian control under the Communist Party, with Xi Jinping consolidating power in ways unseen since the days of Mao Zedong. The removal of presidential term limits in 2018 signaled a shift away from the collective leadership model of previous decades, raising questions about the future direction of Chinese governance. China's growing assertiveness on the global stage led to increasing geopolitical tensions, particularly with the United States. Trade disputes escalated into a full-blown trade war as both nations grappled with issues of market access, intellectual property rights, and technological competition. China's territorial claims in the South China Sea and its stance on Taiwan became flashpoints in international relations, while human rights concerns in regions like Xinjiang and Hong Kong drew widespread criticism from the international community. The one country, two systems model, initially designed for Hong Kong and Macau, faced its greatest test in 2019 when Hong Kong experienced its largest protests since the handover. Millions took to the streets, opposing a proposed extradition bill and expressing broader concerns about eroding autonomy. Beijing's response, including the implementation of a national security law in 2020, signaled a tightening grip on the former British colony and raised questions about the future of civil liberties in the region. China's journey, from its ancient roots along the Yellow River to becoming a global superpower, is a story of resilience and transformation. The balance between tradition and innovation has shaped a culture that influences the world today. If you're intrigued by this fascinating story, make sure to subscribe for more insights. As China moves forward, its history will continue to offer valuable lessons on global dynamics.